Welcome to a special presentation of Good Morning Trumptopia and the almost daily Zencast. This is the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo and his real-time reaction commentary to the final, thank God, presidential debate of 2020. Is it Trump versus Biden or Biden versus Trump? Away from the final showdown between Sleepy Joe and Creepy Donnie. I don't know. Trying to play that name calling game and it doesn't work. I feel silly doing it. Take two. Hello and namaste, dear listeners. We are moments away from the final showdown between the left and the right. And as the two pontificating puppets prepare to pontificate on the stage, I am here ready and recording on one channel and jumping back and forth to kind of catch the commentary on all channels. But probably going to settle into one of them, it doesn't matter which, for the main body of the discourse, where I will be pausing to capture my real-time thoughts here on this delightful audio recording that I will be sharing with you post-event, either late the night of or early the following morning, depending on whether I want to go heavy into editing or I just want to slap some music together and go. And stay tuned because, stick with me. It's going to be weird. I'm going to jump around and I'm going to be commenting on strange stuff. And my first thought of the evening is that already and I haven't had the TV on. I just sat down to kind of start watching. And, but I know from, having previewed the titles on the guide, all three major, cable news channels, of the free variety have been spinning their wheels and echo chambering their echo chamber for at least about an hour and a half, 3 hours. So, you know that Fox News is digging into every way that they can undermine and discredit the left, and the other two are trying much more politely and civilly to prop up the left and beckon everyone to unite together in opposition to the right under the banner of we are exhausted by this guy and anybody else could do a lot better. That seems to be the general attitude, no matter what overall spins you try to slap on top of it. But that could be my bias projecting, right? But anyways, I humbly welcome you to this recording. And I entreat you to settle in and enjoy the various comments that I will capture for you all to consider. Noteworthy as we get started is, of course, the previously announced tactic of having mutable microphones on stage, and the question of whether or not that will in any way, shape, or form deter, stop, or disable Donald Trump from being Donald Trump. We shall soon see. They just kind of wrapped up their pre-show, and one thing pointed out by commentators on the left is that, the plain and simple truths of Trump's flagrant hypocritical criminality, tendency towards behavior that is very likely to turn out to be criminal, is precisely the kind of thing that it's just this overwhelmingly huge, long list of things that could be very appropriately labeled if any other president did them. But most especially, which I'm happy to see them saying, because I've been saying this from day one, long before anyone dared to put it out there, I think, on the mainstream media, that not just any other president, but most especially if Obama had done the exact same thing, the Trump base would react quite opposite to the way they treat Donald Trump. We'll see if that's something that they were opining on, that sort of theme, and suggesting that Biden's strongest tactical choice right now would be to sort of hammer Trump home on the freshest and the newest and the most, the most sort of undebunkable, undeniable of clearly apparent conflict of interests, such as the recently widely reported quote-unquote secret Chinese bank account that reporting has exposed existed for Donald Trump mysteriously, from which he withdrew some obscene large amount of money. He is the definitive political scam artist in as much as that, when he got sick, he went and received hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of health care, which I'm sure he personally paid out of pocket nothing for, which is provided to him by our tax money that we ourselves, as the taxpayers and general inhabitants of this great nation of ours, will not be able to receive. And I understand some level of thinking, but he is the president, as reason enough that he should get that perk. But it's also kind of like a total dick move to be enjoying that as if that weren't sort of hypocritical enough, and simultaneously suing to completely dismantle, remove, and seemingly have no real going, established, completed plan for what to replace it with, all of that which was sometimes quite humorously called Obamacare, which I like to harp on, if I may, for a hot second, go on a sidebar. Obamacare was originally Romneycare. That's not some stupid, crazy, made-up conspiracy theory meme. That's them facts of where they got the construct, where they got the intellectual content and the inspiration for it. So Obamacare was Romneycare, and before Romneycare was Romneycare, when he did it as governor or as mayor or whatever it was that he was, whatever position of power he had when he kind of fostered this thing, it was developed and put forth by that weird think tank. Before it was, I used to be able to rattle this off. Which crazy, scary, big money, not quite extreme, but very, very over there to the right think tank? Heritage Foundation. It was Heritage Foundation Care. I shit you not. Unless I've been lied to by some really oblique and very convincing, and who knows, right? That's the counter argument, that all the news is totally fake news. But I digress. We're suspending all of that because we've already discussed them at all. Let's find out how this actual debate kicks off. Okay, taking a moment just as they are being introduced. So no action has happened. She's just literally said their names. I want to take a moment and share my thoughts on what a silly hissy fit it was. What a hissy fit type playground maneuver it was of dear old Donnie to to back out of the second offline virtual debate. And it was silly, and I was a bit frustrated and preoccupied with other things that had my attention more fully. But I thought it was a bit silly that the two of them put on competing town halls. And because I was a little bit, and this is, an admission, I've played this close to the vest so far, because I was a little bit jealous of my peers, who shall remain nameless, but acquaintances and friends that I notice vis-a-vis the social media platforms, that chose, for whatever reasons they had, to just bypass consuming and observing and watching the initial first debate between the two of them and the vice presidential debate, which I sort of half watched and didn't make a big commentary thing about, and missed the party with the fly about. I'm sad about that. I was also preoccupied with other things that evening, and I was on the wrong day in my head, and I thought it was the following evening, and it caught me off guard. But I digress. I live in a time blurry situation. Thank you, 2020. But to cancel out and do the other thing was silly of both of them. And I don't know that the country was served well by it. And I also am sad because I missed out on what was apparently a hilarious Trump town hall, where the host kind of pressed him on in ways that a previous host haven't quite gotten to, but maybe I'm overblowing the one or two clips that I've come across since that event. But I knew when I indulged myself in just blowing off the competing town halls, it was mostly because I would be like, whatever, they're just going to spin their own spin. They're going to be themselves. And as you may or may not have already caught, dear listeners, my position currently is mostly, can we vote Trump out? I don't really care who gets voted in. If Joe Jorgensen comes out of nowhere and nails all 50 states, I will be impressed. And I will applaud the American electorate for flexing its muscles. Because honestly, I just want the system to get inundated with real votes, honest, authentic votes. That's my wish for this beautiful country of ours that we share, in large part because I'm not allowed to at all, not until I pay my special join the club membership fee of full-blown citizenship. But I am here legally with my papers, so don't anybody give me shit. It's 6:16 and I'm rambling. What was I saying? Oh, right. So these competing town halls, I blew them off, and then I didn't have much to say about them since then. And in large part because, I'm not out to defend Biden, right? To expand on my subject of duality, non-duality, vis-a-vis my political view, I don't feel I need to defend Biden. Nor do I technically support him. Will I be happy when he wins? Absolutely. Because we'll be definitely given the sort of reprieve of better leadership. We'll still be in the murky area of the old normal. Wasn't all that healthy, folks. Because back then, they all just sort of played their roles and did all the stuff we would object to a little bit less openly and less overtly. And less right on the surface of things. So there will still be a lot of work and a lot of waking up our friends and family and beloved ones on the left, because, no politician is so perfect as to be the subject of religious-like adoration and blind following, right? And we should always be... Governance is supposed to be a little bit more alive than the way we treat it. We've unfortunately relegated it to a kind of reality TV show in a very real sense. And although I cynically like to call it the original TV reality show, I think it's always had that sort of problematic flaw. But when it's working at its best, it's something that we are more civically engaged with and less cynically mocking. Our engagement is actual organization involvement and participation in the giant civic machine for the greater good, the best good for all, whatever the best phrasing of that intent is. And of course, we fall way short of that, even when we do not have a crazy, corrupt, two-faced, morally disgusting cartoon character of a bloated, creepy old man like Donald Trump. No offense, but the guy was a horrible person before he ran for office. Okay? And that's just always going to be true. So, let's enjoy the show between these two not so ideal, totally flawed human beings, because they still are. Inserting that caveat, barring the unforeseeable potentiality that they are both robots or lizard people or some variation of that theme, they are human beings, right? So let's remember that and ground our mindfulness and our awarefulness of as we participate in the civic activity of enjoying this Punch and Judy show of finding out which of these two senior citizen and bordering on slightly senilic old men has got it, is the toughest and the wiliest and the wisest. And I say that with love, right? Okay, enough. That was a lot of ado about probably what will be mostly nothing. Without further ado, I will now shut up and actually watch a big chunk of the debate and then tell you about it on the other side. I cannot help myself, but in the opening moments, while the applause from the audience welcomed both candidates, the two gentlemen came and stood next to their podiums, and it hit me really, really hard and really, really palpable. That meme with the guy with the coffee mug in the park with the table with the sign up front that says "Change My Mind," and someone made a different version of the meme. I don't know which is the original. But I saw, I think, the Change My Mind guy, coffee mug guy first. And this is completely absurd and absurdist. And I mean no horrible ill will or I don't think I'm being too ego-driven, ego-trappy, judgmental about it. But the meme is true! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Whatever it means, and is probably meaningless, the current president, number 45, the great chosen orange one, Donald J. Trump, does indeed stand and fills out his baggy-ass suit as though he were just the front half of a centaur. As if there were an invisible back half of the centaur person being cloaked with some sort of CGI mind control technology. But that's how he stands! He would fit in. You could CGI him right into any movie with centaurs in them. And it would be hilarious, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone's already done that. If someone's already done that, please share that at me on the social medias. Facebook is probably the most accessible. You just find Mr. Zeppo. Anyways, that made me stop and completely need to comment, because if you haven't seen it, just look at a full body view of him standing after having been walking to his mark and then doing nothing. And he stands, especially if it's at a slight, almost 45-degree angle, you can see it, and you'll suddenly see an invisible horse back half. And it all makes sense. And maybe there is some conspiracy theory out there already that says there is a secret hiding overlord species of invisible, intactile half centaurs that you can only, trans-dimensional centaurs, where you can only see their horse half in the horse dimension. I don't know. It's probably out there. Wilder things have happened. But if it isn't, now I've inspired someone to go on ahead and try to make that happen. Hashtag Centaur Dimension. I don't know. Okay, for realsies, let's see what they debate about in the opening segment. Whoa, 6 major topics. This is going to be either a slugfest or some sort of exercise in tedium. Because if I understand correctly, and they haven't explained the rule yet, but I just had to stop at 6 categories. And also, pause and sidebar, explain something for anybody who's really, really new to the show. And I'm sorry if this is redundant because you've been listening to the show regularly, but I need to make sure that I constantly disclaimer this so it's not lost on people. I do not hate Donald Trump. I am an unfulfilled stand-up comic / comedian / artist / writer / satirist / lampoonist / would-be aspiring cartoonist if I can ever get my ass to sit at the desk and master the software available to me to create little animation stuff. And I want to poke fun at the world. And nothing is sacred because everything is sacred. Okay? And I have been the butt of people's jokes my entire life. I'm a goofy looking person. Some people find me handsome, not very many, and I'm flattered that occasionally people do. It's a tragedy when it's a gentleman that finds me handsome. I appreciate it, but it doesn't work for me. No offense, don't judge me. I'm not judging you. It just doesn't fly. It doesn't float the boat, yo. And everybody's got to respect those boundaries and be chill about it. Okay, just chill the fuck out on all fronts. Generally speaking, I think sage advice: chill the fuck out. And I digress. When the president of the United States is literally Donald Trump, who happens to be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, orange-skinned, self-proclaimed king of America, and declared by others divinely chosen one in some capacity or another, with many variations to boggle the mind, from St. Bernard to Jesus himself to everybody except Judas. Like, I don't think, well, I mean, maybe there's a conspiracy theory out there claiming that Trump is actually secretly Judas, returned from reincarnation to do something magical, but I haven't come across that. But it seems like plausible. I mean, if there's the St. Bernard one, right? I mean, there really was a whole website and everything. Anyways, I digress. The man is actually orange. For whatever reasons, that, like, what other people are orange besides literally the Oompa Loompas? Don't sue me, whoever owns that movie. Right? Like, cultural icon. And while he may be really tall for an Oompa Loompa, you know, he's like 6'2" or whatever, he's big, and he's doughy, and he's orange. Either by some sort of natural mutation or by choice. Okay? Let's let that one simmer. I mean, that was my first dead-on giveaway of, like, really? We're going to take this seriously? He doesn't need to have been on The Simpsons, although he has, both as an object of someone else's parody and, I think, himself. I think Donald Trump has literally been a guest on The Simpsons, although I could be wrong about that. But he's definitely parodied himself on media and been the clown of a rich, crazy doofus on purpose, and sort of in real life, anyways. And those are exactly the sorts of things that, in my industry, from my perspective, artistically, are free reign to just poke and prod. And it is not my fault he stands the way he stands. Just as much as it is not my fault that he had bone spurs only when it got him out of going to war and never else in his life. Magical bone spurs, right? Like, that's just a fact. There's no arguing that. So I digress. Okay, for reals. I'm really now 22 minutes into my commentary. Gonna really let it roll and watch what they've got to say and not just ramble at you about my crazy opinion. There's a lot, by the way, because I know that I'm kind of heavy. I want it to be known that I will not give Joe Biden a free pass. I've already sort of half Pinocchio, like 1.5 Pinocchio noses, mostly false, but sort of okay. I can see why people think it's true. Have been accused of giving the Obama-Biden team a free pass all 8 years. And I've explained it before, but I'll say it again. Because I want my position to be clear and known. I had my critiques of the Obama administration, and I was pretty open and pretty blunt about it. And when my Democratic friends saw them, I think they got mildly annoyed. When my independent bloc friends saw it and had supported Obama, they were bummed out, but sort of realistic and went, yeah, okay, that's the thing, it's happening. Blah, we gotta call them out on it. And the people on the right were blind with rage because of some other mysterious reason that had nothing to do most of the time with any of his policies or any of his supposed skeletons in his closet. Okay? There was, for everybody, for all the Trump supporters and apologists and woe is meists about Trump, saying that he's the most abused president in American history, y'all are just tone deaf and a half and do not realize how ridiculous you sound because of the 8 years of overt, blind, foaming at the mouth, red eyeballs of mostly racist and things that pretended to not be racist but were really pretty borderline racist hate coming out of most of all your mouths over there on the right at Obama. Purely because you were encouraged by people like Trump and others to act out that way because they were, and because Obama did not belong in the beloved White House. But I digress. I didn't want to get lumped or lost in that noise of Obama hate, of Obama delusion or dementia or whatever you want to call it. So it's adorable when the Trumpeteers, as one of my friends likes to call them, point fingers at everybody that has a critique of Trump and calls them delusional or fomented by fake media outrage. No, dear Trump believers and con victims. There are many of us of all types, Republican, Democrat, Independent, non-voters, etc., that have quite consistently laughed at, mocked, ridiculed, and not liked Donald Trump because he is a great big walking ego trap of ego traps of an orange buffoon of a sociopathic sycophant with crazy, disturbing tendencies of many types that are unsavory, to put it politely, at best. So for him to be in the White House just means he's now even more publicly available for that sort of onslaught of critique. And that is one of the backbones of the kind of freedom of speech right that America must always retain and embrace. And that anyone that confuses patriotism for the nation with some sort of personally misguided, delusional, blind faith, direct personal patronage and or loyalty as patriotism to the individual madman puppet person in office, sorry, y'all gonna have to suck your thumbs about it because you're on the wrong side of both the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, the intent of the law, and the normative norms that have always functioned when they function well in this country. And that's just not how we do it. No offense. And I say we, inclusive of myself, as a permanent resident that doesn't currently have voting rights, that might in the future. And that's a whole long personal story that's got nothing to do with nothing, right? Because free speech and creative license ensures that I still have the artistic license to opine publicly about what I would like to support and endorse and perpetuate out there in this civic discussion platform of this country and of the world at large. Go get involved. Go vote your conscience. And when your guy's in office, brace yourself, because myself and others like me will be sure to bring our attention to them, hold their feet to the fire, and say, "Excuse me, sir, and or madam, and or whoever you are. But what you said and what you did, what you did and what you said are mismatched." Trump is just so beyond the pale and so outrageous it was obvious he would be a horrible president from the get-go and that there would be all kinds of flaws. And to pretend otherwise, I can't comprehend. I truly cannot comprehend. No one's been able to show me enough evidence to convince me of my admittedly biased view of Trump. And that's because I base that bias, I've made those determinations and assessments based on my, many years of observing him as one of many public figures that crave attention and that I can't agree with and that I can't endorse. Because, I'm savvy like that and like to be aware. I used to sometimes find him entertaining, okay? I didn't totally hate The Apprentice. It wasn't my top-of-the-line favorite hit show, but I digress. Okay, for realsies now. Half an hour into my commentary. They haven't even opened their mouths yet. I have not heard the two candidates speak. I beg your forgiveness and indulgence, friends. Here we go. Okay, the rules were explained about the microphones, and they're cute. And like I said, I didn't think they would do anything to stop Trump from being Trump, because he will probably shoehorn and interrupt and mutter and grunt and make all kinds of buffoonish attempts at undercutting Biden during the open mic portion, right? So for anybody who didn't watch this delightful event and don't know from listening to this show right now what the rules were, it's simple. A question will be asked. Each candidate will have a turn, 2 minutes of time to respond to that question, where their mic will be on and the other candidate's mic will be muted. I think they're just going to alternate back and forth between one or the other. But in between, once they've each answered their question, they'll another duration, I think also of 2 minutes, but that I may just be repeating the 2 minutes that she said about their individual 2 minutes. But there's a portion of time after they've both spoken for 2 minutes with the other person's mic muted that they'll be able to talk, and both mics will be on, and they've been cordially invited to listen to each other, which is interesting, and we'll see how well that all plays out. The first question went to Trump about the pandemic, and amazingly, he's calm, collected, and it looks like he's reading from a teleprompter, which I do not believe that he is. When I paused it, it's funny because Biden is either looking down at his notes or closing his mind to keep closing his eyes to keep his mind clear, or taking a nap. One of those little old man micro naps. I don't know. But oh yeah. I was saying earlier how I'm not unfairly and irrationally biased against Trump, right? There's things I don't like about Biden. And when he's in office, I'll mock him and poke fun at him and criticize him for whatever outrageous, especially immoral and or, contributing to the system of oppression type things he might do. But for right now, to prove that I'm not some paid for, bought up troll that's just there to punch against Trump on the behalf of Biden, I would like to point out that he, in my humble opinion, is a flawed candidate. Not only is there a lot of creepy pictures of him sniffing people's hair and sort of being overly affectionate to other people's children, which is not proof that he is in any of the conspiracy theories at all, because he's just sort of, an old huggy guy. And that, if there is a version of that that's possible with him, where that's all it is, and it's, not as vile and corrupt as the most obscene of the conspiracy theories would have you. But he certainly, has his political history, track record, facts of the matter, and can be painted as a hypocrite, right? I've heard that argument. You've heard that argument regarding desegregating schools and criminal justice reform, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the upside is, which I really find fascinating, that no one seems to be capitalizing on, right? If I was a spinster in the system, if I was on Joe Biden's team, I'd be saying jump on top of that and ride that like a cowboy and be like, yep, I said some dumb things in the past. I mistakenly had some backwards views when I was surrounded with people, and people that I looked up to and admired had those backward views. And then I grew up and I learned some lessons, and I, was friends with the first black president and served, worked for and with the first black president, et cetera, and make it craft the very, see, here's one of the problems that we encounter. We talk about narrative, and we talk about crafting narrative, and we talk about lies, and we talk about the truth. And we think about all of those things in absolutist, big, giant, blocky, mutually exclusive, thinky terms. And those are very flawed terms to think thoughts in, if I may say so, dear fellow citizens of planet Dirt. But also, they're never actually absolutely true. And there are things, I just wanted to point that out, and that I don't have some sort of blind adherence or a following for the left or for Biden in particular. There are things I like about the Biden-Harris ticket. There are things I don't like about the Biden-Harris ticket. And because my primary concern is supporting Trumptopia becoming America, like let's make Trumptopia America again. Better yet, let's make Trumptopia the United States of America again. That's this. If I were to have my own banner, flag, statement, it would be that. Let's make Trumptopia the United States of America again. And for better or worse, the system, the duopoly has given us the Biden-Harris ticket. And it will do the, bare bones minimum to pull us out of this tailspin that Trump has guided us into. But I digress. Back to my commentary. It's fascinating and telling and interesting on many levels, this opening response. Donald Trump is talking about COVID like it's A, real, like it's B, an actual pandemic that's happening all over the world with new dangerous upticks and blossoms or hotspots all over the place. And this is the man who dismissed it as a hoax. Once as an outright, total, completely fabricated hoax, and then sort of diminishing degrees of alteration into, well, it's just the response is a political hoax by the left, even though his White House and his response team crafted the shutdown parameters and the sort of general model that was followed by all the states at his behest, right? So how is not like this moment, and I don't know, the show is already like going, right? And they're already well into it. But I wonder how that reality hit the Trump base. Are they just nodding along and supporting and smiling and not thinking about how a two-faced he's been about the whole thing? Not only what he said and what he said about Woodward, but what he's said to his own fan base, and back then versus what he said to what he's saying to his fan base now. How can they continue to turn a blind eye and do the mental gymnastics required to just radically ignore that kind of duplicity? Let's hope that was like a wallop to the gut for a bunch of really hardcore anti-COVID denying, anti-masker, COVID denying Trumptopian fans. A vaccine that's ready and is going to come in a matter of weeks. Trump base, I implore you, where is the outrage from all of you that are adamant anti-vaxxers? He's fighting Big Pharma by climbing into bed and sucking the dick of Big Pharma and cutting corners for them. Pardon the graphic language, folks. This was never this is always an explicit language show. Don't get all hissy-fissy about it. But come on! Where is the outrage? If a Democratic president did that, not only would the Republicans be outraged, his own base of Democrats would be outraged. And mind you, keep in mind, when I ask that question, I am of the mind that outrage should not be blindly embraced and caught up in, right? Like, it's an ego trap. So be careful. But where is the backlash? Where is the political points lost? Hopefully we'll see it between now and November 3rd. Although, already from the numbers that I've been seeing reported just in the last 24, 36 hours, it feels like there is strong evidence for a massive blue wave. I could be wrong. That could just be the echo chambering over there on the left, right? But sometimes I'll tell you what, folks. I've thought about saying this out loud, and I don't remember if I have yet, but I don't think I have. Out of all the episodes, I've thought about this constantly and come close to saying it, but I don't think I have. I understand. I've said this. This is a repeat. I know and understand the arguments against the media, all the critiques, all the theories, all the claims, etc. I'm familiar with the spectrum of them. Maybe not in depth, intimately, all of them in a drilling down deep kind of way, but I've surveyed the landscape and I'm aware and I'm not ignorant. I got you. You don't need to tell me. And I know that some of them must have truth to them, right? But I tell you what, when it comes to measurable, confirmable, yep, that guy's in jail now, or that person didn't go to jail now, or measurable results as reported, the left has a consistent track record of embellishing and whimsically forgiving and omitting the flaws of its chosen side, but generally keeping the facts straight. Like they are most guilty, in my opinion. The general accusation you can make at the media generally leaning left is that they often will omit and stick to, the trending talking points in favor of the left. But they don't. They try to avoid looking like they're covering things up, although they, have been caught doing so, whatever. Everyone does it, right? Covers up because you did something horrible and you don't want anybody to know. And when that happens, of course there'll be a cover up. And I mean the media, not the politicians. The politicians are a whole other thing. But the right, they literally have been defending cases in court with, well, you, quote, shouldn't take our shows seriously as their primary defense, and have been in the overt business of echo chambering much more overtly propaganda talking points and opinion thoughts, and are pretty flagrant with their disregard for the facts until they're held accountable. Okay? The left tries to bank on the facts and then float you the sort of conformist, as long as you're, doing these things, everything will be fine, sort of omission of horrible things kind of problem. That's just a slight take. But anyways, I digress. Always, when it comes to politicians, I prefer to focus my commentary and my analysis on their actual public statements, right? And then the results, as we can see in the impact of the legislation on real world contexts and situations and markets and people. In which case, that's where I draw my current preference boundary. I do not categorically wish to support either party. And if there were a cannabis party, I would automatically support that party. Right? If there was a spiritual, transcendental, non-religious, but, in separation of church and state, but also can we be better human beings kind of political party, I would be a big supporter of that political party. But currently as we stand, as I've tried to be very overt and clear about lately and in the past, and I'm sure, again, I'll have to return to in the future, I prefer the Democrats because of the generally positive impacts that their policies tend to propagate, which, the Republican Party, using the art of con artistry, vilifies and convinces people to be upset about. I have more in common with the left-leaning ideas and principles, generally speaking. Do I think there's a bunch of flaws there too? Of course. Is there corruption? Of course. Do we need to fix it and heal it as part of the two wings, one bird system of governance that has a shadow system of oppression? Obviously, of course. So like I was saying in a previous episode recently, I think that Trump is going to be a bellwether moment of realization that will, although there'll be a lasting, lingering sort of nuisance of a Trumpism movement, I think the deeper, more powerful aha awakening type ripple effect will be akin to and related to like those who are leaving their KKK and their other white supremacist groups behind out of realizing, wow, that's insane. There's going to be people waking up from the clarion seductive call of Trumpism and will stop drinking the alt-right and right political Kool-Aid. And then the Democrats can wake up and realize, hey, we're drunk on the blue Kool-Aid. If the Republicans are drinking the red Kool-Aid, the Democrats are drinking the blue Kool-Aid. Because the whole system is sort of screwball and needs an overhaul. Not to be burnt down. We don't need a civil war. We'll just die a lot if we do that. We need to heal the human people from the inside out. The way, all the enlightened ones that we all pretend to sort of believe in when we claim to believe in them. Like, our good old pal Jesus taught us to. If you're intrigued by that, there's plenty of that in the previous 3 years of episodes archived in the podcast feed. All right. Let's see how Trump manages the open mic session after Biden responds. And I'm very eager to see how Biden responds. Because, Trump is just spinning wheels, right? Like, my other critique to Trump's initial few moments of responding is that I've heard it all before. This is a broken record. This is a guy willfully, gunning the gas while his big, giant four-wheel truck is sinking in the swamp that he flooded. Because he sure as fuck, pardon, I chose a weak word. He sure as fuck didn't drain the swamp. For more on that, look for the episodes where I talk about how he's not draining the swamp. He's just stockpiling it full of new monsters. 2 new things from the moment I came back. The military is going to distribute Trump's warp speed, cutting corners, messed up vaccine. Which the entire industry, by the way, no matter for how nefarious the conspiracy theorists would have you believe them to be, they are really pushing their efforts to be clear and transparent. Do not have a vaccine ready right now. Will not have a vaccine ready by election night, despite however many times Trump peddled that bullshit idea. And if I remember correctly, several of them all signed a public pledge together to not allow politics to interfere with the integrity of the development of their vaccine. Now, the really hardcore cynics in the conspiracy theory community would have you automatically dismiss all of that as, horse and pony show theatrics. And it may well be. But, I don't know. I just always think it's interesting how the villains in conspiracy theory content never fully successfully execute the supposedly exposed evil, nefarious plans as structured in the content of conspiracy theory. They do other things, which are rightfully then, brandied about as proof or evidence in the past, They have their flaws, they have their corruption, they do bad things. I'm not denying the any of the horrible problems and problematic actions of big pharma and the vaccine industry, etc. And I'm not denying that, like all things, that industry, like the food industry, like the healthcare industry, needs deep, massive, structural, intellectual reform. But it's outrageous, and it's outrageous to me. It's outrageous to everybody else who already is predisposed to dislike Trump. And it should be outrageous to his base that he's just uttered the words he's just uttered. And it's phenomenal that he's saying it. It's how far we have come, dear Trumptopia, from the beautiful good old days of its Democratic hoax that will magically go away in April. Did he really get sick? That's a lingering question. Let's put a big fat red pin on the corkboard of things we might come around back to talk about in future episodes. Because I have already mused on this a little bit in some recent episode. So go find that and entertain yourself with it. But it's a valid question, right? As someone was pointing out recently, I think it might have been one of my two siblings. Yes, I believe it was. There have been previous examples of presidents dipping out, like sneaking off to do medical things for weird reasons, not wanting to announce it. So it's not beyond the scope of possibility. It's not beyond the realm of probability that he might have faked getting sick. Right? Because it would be good for his numbers. Even though he once stood firmly and declared this to be a hoax from China. Now it's a very real pandemic from China. The question was, what would you do next in your response to the pandemic? And so far, he is wasting away his initial 2-minute block of time just spinning old plates we've already heard. He sounds like an echo chamber replay of one of his own rallies from April right now. Except that he's a little bit more real about the pandemic being real. He wrapped up his 2 minutes very appropriately, and I don't know if they've got a little, I love those 3 lights that'll tell you, green, you're solid, yellow, your time is almost up, red, it's ending now. And maybe they've got that going on before the mic mutes, because he landed on a beautiful, repetitious end. And that's how Trump works his word magic. Right? It shouldn't be too shocking that his base just repeats what he says, because he repeats what he says over and over and over and over ad nauseum, invoking the fundamental base sort of law of stupid repetition that is used by advertising. You don't have to be right about anything. If you just say something over and over again, someone's going to pick it up and repeat it. Because we are a little bit of monkey here, monkey say. But the entire 2 minutes, nothing about a future plan, nothing about relief for those of us who are unable to work through no fault of our own. And that's a lot of us, yo. Citizens and resident aliens and whatever. It's a lot of people in America that are not working, not chipping in income tax because there's no daily paycheck, there's no weekly paycheck, not paying into the Social Security system, and not being able to do the most important thing, if we're going to be really blunt about what America really is and how it actually operates, spend money on stuff we don't need. Tragically, and I'm not a fan of the fact that that is how this country works. But when we talk about growth in the economy, that's what that means, folks. Disposable income. Monies that you've earned through work that you will then spend on pleasantries, luxuries, pleasures, and or food and survival anemones. Anemones? Those are things in the sea. Amenities. Survival accoutrement, to borrow the French. Right? Like, not a word for 2 minutes. Just blah, 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 the same old stuff, but with a little bit more somber, serious tone about how real this totally fake virus is. The thoughtful, intelligent, because they're out there. I don't blanket insult all Trump base as stupid. I just express my own actual real life shock and amazement that thinking people that constantly lash out about critical thinking skills and about quote unquote doing research can listen to this guy talk for 4 years and not go, I made a mistake. This guy's an asshat. He's worse than your average Joe Schmo politician because he's corrupt on the surface as well as behind closed doors. But I digress. It is now Biden's turn to talk. And I'm very curious, will Trump try to just talk over the muted mic? Like, they're only 6 or 7 or 12 feet apart from each other. Trump can talk loudly, right? I don't know. Or will he restrain himself through all six rounds of this? Biden's opening swings were pretty basic fundamentals that he's already covered before. So nothing terribly new from him as of yet in his first chunk of time. And that's to give credit where credit is due. And that's, Trump is a person in the seat of power and to be held responsible for how we have conducted ourselves as a nation so far, and the fact that we have had way too many days during 2020 when 1,000 people per day have died from this otherwise preventable disease that we could have, snapped the transmission chain of a long time ago. That's the problem. That's the part that I don't understand how they don't get it on the other side, right? Because there's anti-maskers who are not COVID deniers, and those are curious creatures. They're just willfully refusing, despite the clearly laid out, tactical explanation, they're just willfully refusing to participate in the thoughtful, starving out of the disease. We could have done that in 15 to 30 days. Back in March. Right? If we'd started when we first heard about it in February and just crafted better plans, organized a federal response a little bit more intelligently, and funded all the, shelter at home, can't go to work folks, aren't going to be able to work from home types with survival money, we could have snapped it in 35 days, 40 days, max, and just cut off the disease's ability to continue to perpetuate itself because we've identified all those who got sick and isolated them, and the rest of us, in order to avoid anyone who might be sick and just hasn't been identified yet, really did a sturdy lockdown. But no matter how much Trump fluffs himself about his early response, it was a mishigas, a patchwork of incompetent and uneven and too soon, too late, and then, too strict, not strict enough, chaos. And it wasn't well orchestrated, and it did not support those who are suffering the most. Those with jobs they would not be able to keep under the conditions required by the safety protocol. Well, friends, this is as good a place as any to trim it and flip it. Take a break, don't forget to hydrate, and tune right back in for part 2 of my live reaction commentary to the final presidential debate of 2020.